Sure,
Okay,
that's great.
so I'm Cameron Browne. I'm a computer science researcher at Maastricht University in the Netherlands, and I'll be talking about beyond the square and implementing general board geometry. So the talk, I'll start with an overview of my current research project, the Digital Ludeme project. Then I'll talk about how we model game boards as graphs, and then how we actually define general boards in our game description language. And I'll go through the slides pretty quickly. There'll be lots of visual examples throughout the presentation. So we have evidence of ancient board games dating back 5,000 years. And this usually involves lots of physical evidence of the boards, the pieces and so on, but almost never do we find the rules for ancient games. So the question I'm looking at is, can we use modern computational techniques to help reconstruct the rules of ancient games? So this is the main idea behind the Digital Ludeme project. This is a 5-year project funded by the European Research Council, being run at Maastricht University. And the aim of the project is to digitally model, reconstruct, and map the world's traditional games throughout history. And if you want to look at the project, the website is just there. So we want to identify and model the 1,000 most important traditional games throughout history from all cultures worldwide. But we also want to incorporate modern games. And so we can see how we transition from the ancient games to the modern games. But we need to do all this in a single, consistent digital format so we can play these games and compare them. And the model we're developing for this is called Ludeme. Ludeme is a general game system for modeling, playing, analyzing, and so on, general board games. It works by describing games as component ludemes or game memes, where each ludeme corresponds to a Java class that has a certain functionality. So far, we have more than 500 ludeme classes, 500 constants, and more than 500 games implemented for the system. And you can download and play with Ludeme now at the website. The question I'm focusing on this talk is how we model all these different board types in the single consistent format. So the short answer is that we model game boards as graphs. So this lets us represent any game board in a single format where the playable sites are the vertices in the graph, and the adjacency between sites is indicated by edges between the vertices. So this neatly captures the underlying structure of the game boards. For example, here we have the Kensington board on the left. If we place a vertex in each cell, which is each playable site for this game, and if we put edges between the playable cells, then on the right, we have all the information we need for playing this game in a convenient form. A very useful concept from graph theory is the concept of the dual. So just say we have this graph at the top here, the blue graph. If we place a vertex in the middle of each cell and join adjacent cells with an edge and place another vertex in the outer region outside the board, we have the dual of the graph. If we don't include the outer region, if we just connect the internal adjacencies, then we have what's called the weak dual of the graph. And the weak dual is very useful for turning simple tilings into exotic boards with a simple operation. And I'll show some examples of this soon. So in the Ludeme software, we represent each game board as a single graph. It needn't be connected, it can have multiple components. And this lets us play the game on the vertices, the edges, and the cells of the graph, or on any combination of these. For example, here we have a modern board game called Conhex. Players place these pieces on the vertices, but then own cells. So this game is played on both the cells and the vertices. And the winning condition is connection through the cells in this game. So within each graph, we define the cells as being orthogonal if they share an edge. So these are the blue relationships in the diagram. And we define cells as diagonal if they share a vertex but not an edge, and if the midpoints of the cell are coincident with a vertex from that cell. So these aren't the strict mathematical definitions of the terms orthogonal and diagonal, but these are the way that game designers would understand these terms. So we've gone with the common usage or the game design definitions where we can. Now you'll notice that there are some cells here that haven't been labeled yet. We describe these as off diagonals. So off diagonals are cells that share a vertex but are not the straight diagonals. So this is a form of secondary diagonal. You don't see very often, but it is a useful definition. And we simply describe elements that share an edge or vertex as adjacent and neighbors as orthogonal or diagonal relationships. We define directions between sites. We have absolute directions, including compass directions, rotational directions, clockwise, counterclockwise, and so on. Spatial directions up and down. Relational directions, such as all orthogonals, all diagonals. And we also specify relative directions, relative to the player or the piece direction, such as forward, backward, left, right, and so on. So this lets us define walks throughout any graph made up of these steps between adjacent elements. So here we have a knight move, and the walk for this knight move is forward, forward, right, forward. So this is just one of the possible knight moves. A nice thing about describing moves this way is that we can take this move and just map it to any topology. We can just take it and move it to any board. There can be ambiguities. For example, we don't know if the final right step should be to this cell or to this cell, but there are ways to resolve these. Using these steps and these walks, we can define radials, which are the slide moves that you'll see in chess-like games. They're the lines of play defined by regular step patterns. So for orthogonal radials, these tend to be connected, but we can have diagonal radials that are not connected, typically on the hexagonal grid. So these diagonals don't share an edge. And also we can have radials that branch from a cell. So here we have forward radials through a triangular cell, and they can branch to the left or branch to the right. The triangular grid is actually a bit of a pain. There are many ways to define diagonal slides on this on this tiling. For triangular chess, we have diagonal, orthogonal, diagonal, orthogonal. For tri-chess, we have the opposite. We have orthogonal, diagonal, orthogonal, diagonal. And some moves also slide through the off diagonals. So generally, the triangular grid is the worst case for any game. And whenever we want to test some rule set, this is the test case we try first. So that's the basic geometry we're working with. And I'll now look at how we actually define these boards in the Ludeme program. We define them using generators based on tilings and shapes, and then operators that combine these in simple ways. And this lets us define a huge range of board types very simply. So here are some of the generators we have: the regular tilings, semi-regular, custom tilings. And the benefit of using the Ludemic approach is it's extensible. As we need new tilings, we just implement the class, add it to the system, and it's automatically incorporated into the whole system. So I'll go through a few examples.
Hey, Lauren. I'm a bit tired. I've been up this conference since 4 this morning, and I got to do the same tomorrow. It's interesting though, but It's on.
Go ahead, Cameron.
Okay. Yeah, so these are the regular tilings, the square, hex, and trigonal. They don't need much explanation. We do use the syntax use vertex if the game is to be played on the vertices rather than the cells, which is very important. Semi-regular tilings, here are some examples. And when we generate these semi-regular tilings, we do them using major elements and minor satellite elements. So the 3, 4, 6, 4 tiling, this means that around each intersection, we have triangle, square, hexagon, square. The major elements are the hexagons. So we call this a size 2 board, and the smaller elements are just generated around those. Here are some custom tilings. We have the Morris board, a brick tiling, the quad hex tiling, Celtic tiling. And we also provide shape generators for generating the boards. The wheel board is a very common board used for ancient games. The spiral board comes from Mihen, the oldest known board game from ancient Egypt about 4,500 years ago. We have a wedge shape. We have the shape itself. We just specify a shape. And we can define custom shapes using polygons and repeat them. So this lets us create quite interesting boards. So here we define a unit and then just repeat it as we want. And so this board could be played in 3 phases, light, medium, and dark, and the phases could interact. The limping board is a type of board in which the edges alternate n, n+1, n, n+1. And for the hexagonal grid, this has some nice properties. If you're doing a projective board game where adjacencies project around the board, this lines up very nicely, as in the game projects. And for the game start, it relies on the number of outer cells being odd. And a limping hexagonal board will always give an odd number of outer cells. Here we have a custom shape. The shape is defined by a polygon. It's a cross shape, and we tile it with a Celtic tiling. So this game could be played on the cells or on the intersections. And I'm not sure how many, this might be a single loop, I think. So this has implications for the game. Now, once we have these basic components, we can combine them in interesting ways using operators based on constructive solid geometry. So here's a board which is the Kensington tiling you saw earlier. I've subdivided it. So cells I've subdivided into smaller cells, and then I take the jewel. And so we get this very strange looking board, which I'd never seen before, but it looks interesting. I'd like to play a game on this board. And the good thing is this board took seconds to define, and I had no idea what the resulting board would look like. So we can generate thousands of these boards and test them, and you don't know what will emerge. These are the list of operators. I'll just highlight a couple. The jewel is a very powerful operator, and subdivide is very useful for introducing complexity and getting unexpected results. And here's an example of using the geometry and incorporating it into the rules of the game. So here we have the 3-3-3-3-6 semi-regular tiling, which in itself is a bit strange and not that interesting for games. But if we take the jewel, suddenly we get this much more interesting and tractable tiling. So here all cells are of equal size, and they form these nice rosette patterns of 6 cells. Now with this rule set, a player wins if they make a line of 4. So here, white has made a line of 4, they win the game. That's probably not very interesting. Instead, if we specify that the line must be orthogonal, then white hasn't won this game. There are 3 orthogonal cells, but this 4th one is not orthogonal, so the game continues. This has implications for the game. Black can block and the game continues. So here we've incorporated the geometry of the board into the rules of the game, which can be quite a powerful mechanism. Here's another example of the dual. Here's the 3-6-3-6 tiling, which in itself is not that interesting. But once we take the dual, we get this very nice arrangement. And once we color these cells, we again get the 3 cell phases. Here's a more complex example. This is the 3-3-4-3-4 tiling. And if you take a second to visualize what the dual will look like, it's not immediately obvious. The dual actually gives this nice chiro tiling, which is used quite often in game boards. And this is my favorite example. If we start with a square tiling, if we add concentric diagonals, rotate it, take the dual, and then we keep the interior square shape, then we get the convex board. And a nice feature of this board is that the intersections are trivalent, which means if you run a connection game on this board, you will not get deadlocks. There are no points where 4 paths can meet. So for this reason, well, it's one reason that convex is a very, very nice connection game. Here's the quadhex board. This is particular to 3-player chess. This board is actually centuries old. It's one of the traditional games we're dealing with. We've parameterized it to allow the separation through the center. And the benefit of this approach is we can just change one parameter. We change 4 to 8, and we suddenly have this much larger, more complex board that would be quite laborious to code by hand. Here is the Kensington board you saw earlier. It's also the 3-4-6-4 board, and it has a name. It's the rhombi trihexahedral tiling. And if we take the dual, we decompose to these kite shapes. The dual returns to the original tiling, though shrunk. And if we just continue taking the dual, we get down to the source hexagon. So repeated duals aren't that interesting. They just make the board smaller and smaller. So instead, the complementary operation of subdivision can be used to add complexity. So here, if we start with the same tiling, the Kensington board, if we subdivide the cells with 6 sides or more, so the hexagons, we get this more interesting configuration. And the dual gives this more. And this is quite a nice board. It has relatively uniform cells. The cells are either 5 sides or 6 sides. They're nice and regular. If we subdivide again and take the dual again, we get this board I hadn't seen before. It looks like it might make an interesting game board. And I'll just show a few examples of the other features that we've implemented for Ludi in terms of game boards. We do provide some custom game boards, such as Suricata. And here it's parameterized for the tiling and the size. We have a large Suricata board. We have the facility to play games on the graphs themselves. We incorporate cell phases. Cell phases can be used for strategic purposes, such as in chess, we have the light and dark cells. part of the game where the color of the cell dictates what moves can be made. This is a game called Triad with the 3 colored hexagonal cells. We can embed boards within boards, so the graphs can be overlaid. This is a game called Ultimate Tic-Tac-Toe, where we have the super game overlaid games. And we can decorate the boards. So at the top, we have a spiral graph, which isn't that interesting. So it is nice to visually decorate the graph sometimes into, say, Mancala boards, backgammon boards, and so on, that players will recognise. And finally, I'll just conclude by saying that we've tried to make the system in Ludi as flexible as possible to allow the widest range of games to be defined. So the only real constraint is that we don't support more than 8 dimensions in the graph. And as an example, here's Taikyoku Shogi as we've implemented in Ludi. It's played on a 36 by 36 board with 402 pieces each. Whoops. I believe this is the most complex board game played by human beings. A typical game will have branching factors exceeding 1,000 moves per turn. This is a very complex game, but was modelled in Ludi quite easily. Okay, so in conclusion, this is how we model boards for general games. We build them from simple graphs using graph operations, and this allows us to define a wide range of boards in a simple, powerful syntax. So that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much.
Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Cameron. Let's postpone the question. Ask Cesco Reale. Can you stand up, Cesco, and talk?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me share my screen. Okay. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm going to talk about abstract strategy games as a tool of scientific communication. This is a seminar that I give in Master of Scientific Communication in Torino. And I will briefly introduce myself. I have to go to the PDF in order to go on. Okay, yeah, here. Okay. So I am co-organizer since 2007 of the Italian Festival of Mathematical Games, where we organize a big tournament of multiple abstract strategy games. It's a team tournament with almost 100 participants. At the Lago Maggiore, Lake Maggiore, as you can see in this picture. I also collaborate since 2008 with the Swiss Museum of Games, where I created an annual event of games. We did also several events. This is in Bologna in 2009. We filled in the whole square in the middle of Bologna, full of abstract strategy games. This is an exhibition workshop that I created, Ludicy, so Odyssey with games, about ancient strategy games and mathematics. This is the master about scientific communication where I teach in Torino, Occam's Razor. And finally, I organized this year Abstracta 2020, Italian symposium of abstract strategy players. And this is a picture of the event. Now, I'll present quite quickly a series of games that I use. Yes.
Cesco.
Yes.
Cesco, are you passing the slides?
Yes.
I see always the first slide.
Okay.
What happened to the rest of the people?
Okay, so it means that it's not working actually. Let me see how it goes. So, What about now?
I still see the first slide always with Ritmomachia and stuff.
Ah, okay. So let me change. So probably desktop. Okay, let me check it. Sorry. Okay, I see why. I think now it should work. Give me a moment.
Okay.
Can you see it moving now?
Yeah. It's fine now. Fine
Okay.
now.
So
Thank you.
yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry for the problem. So here, this is the tournament I was talking about. Now I will just show the pictures. This is on the Lago Maggiore. It's the tournament per teams. This is the Swiss Museum of Games. This is in Bologna, the big event. This is the exhibition workshop about mathematical games. This is the Master of Scientific Communication, which I teach in Torino. And finally, this is the Abstracta, the Italian Symposium of Abstract Players, with a picture of that. So very quickly. Now, I'm going to present a few games that I used during the years for didactical scopes. I do a difference between didactic games and what I call break games. So games that are thematic on what we are talking about, but they don't really teach you a concept. They are just useful to have a break during the exhibition or during the seminar. I will start with Ritmomachia. That is probably one of the most ancient didactic games. It was invented in the 11th century in Germany. And it is something like a chess with numbers. It's a medieval game also in terms of time, because it's quite long, but that's why I have reduced, I created a new game that is called Neo Ritmomachia, and is more or less like Ritmomachia, but it's a bit easier. Then I did another exhibition about cryptography, and about the history of cryptography and privacy. This was for a European project Privacy Flag. And I also, as in most of my exhibitions, I added some games about cryptography. So one of them is, of course, Mastermind, in which you have a secret code that you have to decode to deduce which is the secret color code. So this is kind of a break game in the sense that you don't really learn new concept about cryptography, but it's a nice game that you can have at the exhibition. Then Eleusis, I invite you to see in Telegram, there is an Eleusis bot that you can play. Eleusis was a game invented by Robert Abbott in '56 in order to simulate the scientific method. It's played with cards. Each player plays a card that is like an experiment, and the god has created a law, for example, alternance red and black, for example. And then you try to understand which is this law. And so the first player that ends his card wins. So this is a very interesting game from an epistemological point of view. Now, fractals. I also did an exhibition called The Beauty of Fractals, in which we show fractals from a mathematical point of view and in comparison with art and nature. So what are fractals in mathematics? These are shapes, geometrical shapes that you can zoom in up to the infinity. And finding even each step, you can find some new shapes or always the same shape, depends. But anyway, you can zoom in at the infinity. So this is an example called the snowflakes, in which you can see the first 6 steps. And you can see this is a comparison with nature, for example. These are real snowflakes, and you can see that the structure is very similar step by step. When you go zooming in, you can see again and again the same shape. And this is snowflakes in art. So we had some artworks from some exponents of the fractal movement, that is a movement in art that uses fractals in art. And finally, where is the game? Okay, this is a contour dust. This is one of the simplest fractals. You take a segment and you take out the central third, and then you go to step 2, so here. And then once you are in step 2, you go on, and for each new segment, you take out the central third, and you go to step 3, and then to step 4, etc., etc. So this is and you can go up to infinity, of course. And so this is called the contour dust, from the mathematician that discovered or invented it. And then so we thought to create a game on it. There's the fractal tic-tac-toe, in which you play in the holes of the contour dust. And then as soon as, for example, if you see here below in the green ellipses, this is 1 point for you because it's an alignment of 3. In the purple, it's also an alignment, even if there is a hole in the middle. But the yellow, in the yellow ellipses, this is not a point because you are interrupted by the opponent. And so you count your points automatically. It's you can copy these. I will paste it into the chat later, this link. And then at the end of the level, when you have played all the fields, if it is still a draw, then the next level opens up automatically, and then you go on. So theoretically, could go up to the infinity, this game. So it's a transfinite game. And so this is really interesting to understand what a fractal is playing inside a fractal. Then games in 4 dimensions. This was another exhibition that I created a few years ago. And also I gave a talk in the Board Game Studies 2015 about that. So Quarto, Set, 4D tic-tac-toe, and Connect 4D. I'm going to quickly to show you some ideas about them. Quarto, you have pieces that are different in 4 different dimensions. The shape, that can be round or squared, the color, black or white, height, high or low, and filling, empty or full. So how many different pieces? It's an easy calculation for us, but not necessarily for everyone or for pupils at school. So this is 2 to the power 4, number of states elevated to the number of dimensions. And of course, there is also more mathematics going on. But we can go and do parallelism with the 4 dimensions of another game that is Set. In Set, you have also 4 dimensions: shape, color, number, and shading. But in this case, you have 3 states for each dimension. And so how many different cards are there in the deck? They are all different. And so in this case, the answer here, you can see all the cards. And so it's 3 to the power of 4 is 81. Okay, and then the game consists in placing 12 cards and find 3 cards that constitute a set. And a set are 3 cards that in each dimension are either all equal or all different. Then let's go to the 4D tic-tac-toe. But first of all, let's introduce the 3D tic-tac-toe. So here you can see that you can play the 3D tic-tac-toe even if you have only a bidimensional sheet of paper, because you can juxtapose 3 bidimensional tic-tac-toes. Okay, so these are two alignments. For example, you can consider that this is floor number 1, floor number 2, floor number 3, and then you can see that these are alignments in the 3D tic-tac-toe. So this is the representation of a 3D tic-tac-toe by the superposition of 3 bidimensional tic-tac-toes. Now let's jump 1 dimension up. Okay, well, first of all, is this an alignment in 3D? The answer is not. If you place the three floors, you can see that it is not an alignment, okay? Now let's jump 1 dimension up and let's see the 4D tic-tac-toe that we have created by putting one after the other three-dimensional tic-tac-toes. And here you can see some alignments, okay? And these are also some alignments, but these are not valid alignments in the 4th dimension for the same, by analogy with what we have shown previously, okay? Of course, I'm not going deeper here because I don't have the time, but just if you are curious, please contact me at the end of the talk. In a few seconds, actually minutes, I will show some contacts from my YouTube channel, etc. And then also there is the Anakvataro. This is the Esperanto name of the game that was invented by an Esperantist. In English, I translated with Connect 4D. So it's the same principle, but here you have 4 places, 4 cubes, and also there is a gravity taken into account. Finally, Gomoku. This is also an interesting game. So it's the first that does an alignment of 5 wins. This is one of the most ancient strategy games in the world. And I use it in order to compare axioms and theorems with rules and strategies. And so here I present the rules as axioms and then some strategies as theorems. For example, a simple theorem is that if you have 4 consecutive stones open on both sides, you will win because you cannot be blocked on both sides at the same time. Backgammon is also useful in order to analyze probabilities, and I want to suggest you to use GNU Backgammon. That today, so with our modern technologies, we can see excellent analysis of probabilities, and so we can really learn to play much better. And I conclude with Wendt. That is a new startup here in Switzerland, where I am, that conceived new strategic games in which you are going to cooperate with artificial intelligence. So these are my contacts, cescoreale.com/giochi. Giochi is games in Italian. You can find there my email address, or you can also see my YouTube channel, Cesco Reale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cesco. Thank you very much. So again, we postponed the questions to the end of the session. And I ask now, Etan Ilfeld, are you there? You are. You can unmute yourself, please.
Oh, hello.
Okay, Hi. Go ahead, okay? You take
Great.
It from here.
Cool. Well, first, I want to thank everyone. I'm really enjoying the talks. And actually, let me just move. I've been standing this whole time, and I'm going to switch to sitting down. So let me just bring my computer down here. Cool. So yeah, so I'm going to talk about the Mind Sports Olympiad, where we have a whole gamut, quite a wide gamut of games, including obviously chess and many of the games that have been discussed. We have, for example, we have Quarto and backgammon and Gomoku, shogi, lots of games. So let me tell you a little bit about the Mind Sports Olympiad, and then I'll share with you why this was quite a, I'd say, an amazing year for us technologically, with how we've had to basically adapt. So I'm going to share screen. Let me just see, make sure that this works. Okay, here we go. Hold on. By the way, oh, I'm sharing. Okay, I was just looking at the Ludi portal, so that's me enjoying, just checking out various sites. So very interesting stuff. So first, just a little bit about the Mind Sports Olympiad. We've been running an annual Mind Sports tournament since 1997, and it usually takes place over around 8 days, so 2 weekends combined, and it takes place in London. And since 1997, that's a lot of years. This was our 24th year, and because of COVID, we couldn't hold it in London, so we had to run it online, which we did, and so it was quite a historic year. Basically, we ran 100 different events, as in tournaments, and there are also 8 meta events, which I'll explain what they mean as well. And we had 106 countries take part, and a lot of new countries that had never joined before. So it was quite a pivotal year in terms of the accessibility of the Mind Sports Olympiad. But I want to show you kind of what the Mind Sports Olympiad looks like, or looked like before this year. So it just so happens we made a documentary about the Mind Sports Olympiad that it won Best Documentary at Gen Con this year in August. So we're going to release it next year, but as part of the conference this weekend, we're making it freely available to everyone. So you can go to YouTube to this unlisted link that I'm going to show you just the first minute or two, so you can see what our tournament's about. But basically, just to kind of put this in context, even though the Mind Sports Olympiad has a lot of individual tournaments, and let me just stop sharing for a sec and just explain. So we've got lots of individual tournaments, and people are welcome to come and play in just one tournament, no problem. They can win individual medals. These were the medals for this year. They still say London on them because we expected it to be in London. We had them made before the pandemic. But basically, the ethos of the Mind Sports Olympiad is to try and get people to play lots of different games. So that's fine. You want to show up, you want to play a single game, that's no problem. But we have a lot of meta events, and our crown jewel is called the Pentamind, which sounds a little funny. It sounds a bit like pantomime, but actually means penta as in 5 and mind as in brain. And the idea is you can take your top 5 scores from any 5 different games. So you can only use one chess score, for example. We had about a dozen chess tournaments, but only one chess score would work. And add up those scores, and the person with the best Pentamind score is crowned the Pentamind World Champion. And that is that's our crown jewel. That supposedly indicates that you are the best games player in the world. I think in general that's probably true. And we've had a lot of great players over the years win that, including Demis Hassabis, the CEO of DeepMind, who is our all-time champion. He won the Pentamind for 5 years, 5 years in the first decade of the Mind Sports Olympiad. And he still comes and plays specific games like Entropy, if anyone's familiar with that. That's quite a great game, also known as Heil. But he doesn't compete for the Pentamind. He's too busy these days. But let me show you what the Pentamind looks like, and that will give you a real indication of what things look like usually. So here we go. I'm gonna put some full screen, and there we are.
The Pentamind is for people that play everything. It's quite different from any other competition. It involves many different games. very different games that involve very different skills.
As a pro gamer, I mean everything. It is the World Championships.
If you wanted to show yourself to be the best games player, you have to win the Pentamind.
I'll show you how it used to look also. This is the first year, 1997.
I, without further ado, declare the Mind Sports Olympiad open and invite Grandmaster Keane to make his first move.
Ready, everyone?
Bravo!
Our ambition was to create an Olympics for the mind. Absolutely huge, internationally giant, the greatest mental sports festival the world had ever seen.
It's been called the biggest gathering of anoraks ever. Experts in chess, backgammon, bridge, and other more obscure mind games. These first ever intellectual Olympics have attracted contestants from 30 countries. Top players in, for example, African Aware.
It was amazing. It was like thousands of people, all the top games players around the world in all the different games. All the top chess players were there, all the top fellow players, go players. It was really exciting. Mind is the competition to find the all-round best games player at the MSO. Effectively, it's pick your best 5 results from 5 different games. And the person that has the most points at the end of the MSO is the Pentamind champion.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop it there and go back to my presentation. So yeah, so quite an ambitious inception for an event, and it went on. It was quite big in its first few years, and then there were some. I won't get into the whole history, but there's some political disputes between the organizers and the naughties, and it wasn't quite as well represented, but it still kept taking place every year. And then I took over as the chief organizer in 2010, and this year was my 11th year running it. And I've been kind of bringing it back up to hopefully to its full glory, and it's great. I love it. It's a wonderful event. But basically, we've got all these amazing tournaments, and this year we had we had the venue booked. We hadn't paid for it or signed a contract yet, which was fortunate. But we realized we couldn't do that, so we thought, well, hey, let's try and put together an online version of this, which was one heck of a challenge. So let me just go back to sharing screen here. And I'll go through some of these. Here we go. Whoops. Can I get out of that? No, I can't get out of that. Technology, you gotta love it. Here we go. I can do this. Yep, there we go. So all right, I will share screen again. Back to plugging Ludi a lot here. Well, why not? Cameron deserves it. So this year we decided to try and make it as accessible as possible. So first, in terms of time zones, we decided that we'd restrict it mostly to the afternoons and evenings in Europe, which was good for Europe and also reasonably good for the States. And so we had a lot of people playing even on the West Coast of the States, and obviously into Eastern Europe as well. But what was interesting, some of our hardcore players, for example, one of the Jordi Alexander, who took second in the Pentamind and was playing from Singapore, he was totally out of whack in terms of time zones, but he just changed his time and accommodated. But for a lot of people in the world, it worked out very well. We wanted to be, as I said, as accessible as possible. We had 5,884 unique competitors this year, and most of them played in more than one event. So we actually had 9,001 active participants. They had registered for, there were actually 11,000 entries, but as we learned, when you have an online event, people tend to register and not show up as much as they do for physical events, but that was fine. And then all these different meta events, some of which, obviously the Pentamind being the crown jewel. We also have the Modern Abstract World Championship, which is also a very competitive event for modern abstract games, and a lot of other world championships, including the Mental Calculations World Championship and a lot of other quirky competitions. So if you do want to actually go and learn more about MSO, you can go to msoworld.com and you can see these were, we've got under the results for the medal table this year, you can see all the different games from Seven Wonders, a great Euro game, to Abalone, a great modern abstract game. And you can see all the results going down to all the way to the Pentamind. So it was very, very international, and that was great, very accessible. Now, one of the big issues for us was trying to deal with cheating. It was interesting. I was watching a conference earlier this afternoon and how to analyze the statistical probabilities to find cheaters, and I think in many platforms it's actually quite easy to catch cheaters. So obviously a lot of the chess platforms have got screening algorithms in there, and we partnered with Lichess, who I have to say were really supportive. They ran all of our chess events, and that was really just the easiest thing to run, because in Lichess people have ratings, the bots, their algorithms can catch cheaters pretty easily, and you also don't have to do anything in terms of pairings and running the actual tournament. It's all automated for you. But we actually ran a lot of events like Catan, for example, which is one of the most popular Euro games, and there is no pairing software. In fact, it's hard to find pairing software for multiplayer games where you have 3 or 4 players, and we have our own kind of custom-made software, and I've seen other people use their own as well, but there isn't a general pairing, Swiss kind of pairing software for 3 or 4 player games like Etan. So we had to do that all ourselves and communicate that with a larger number of players. I want to show, actually, I might need to share screen on another screen here, how we communicated with players, because I think you'll find that quite fascinating. Is that Jorge? Is that you giving me a 5-minute mark? Is that what that is? Okay, 5 minutes. All right, so I'll need to speed it up, and that's cool. So let me see here. Here I'll go to Chrome for a sec. So here we are. Can everybody see? This is Discord. Can you maybe I'm just curious, can anyone raise their hand if they're familiar with Discord? Okay, not many people familiar. Well, this is apparently the web, kind of like the web platform that people use to communicate when playing video games primarily. And we found it a very useful place to organize tournaments. So we have our own channel, which is kind of like our own little server. And in there, we let people ask questions, which they do. This is for Marco Polo, which is a fantastic game, fantastic Euro game. We would publicize the standings. Oops, here we go. It's loading, and show who's winning. The web is a little bit slow right now, and turn info. But we found Marco Polo. There we go. We put all the rules there. We found Marco Polo to be Discord to be a great place to communicate, and people could go in and ask, and you can jump into tables and do video or just audio and talk to people. For multiplayer games, we'd usually put people at a table and they'd all be able to communicate with each other that way by text or video. So it kind of has its own built-in Zoom in there. So Discord was an amazing way to create a kind of a sense of community. And as you can see here from our Discord, I mean, people are still using Discord, and in their background, they still have the MSO Discord. So right now there's 125 people online in the MSO Discord. And I think we had over 1,000 people use Discord, because a lot of our events were on Discord. Anyway, so I'm conscious of time, so let me just jump back to what else I want to share. So the other big issue, I think someone doesn't have their mic muted, by the way. We can mute them. I think it's maybe Anton's mic isn't muted. Jorge, can you mute them perhaps? Cool, thank you. And hold on, where am I? There we go. I'm just going to share my desktop. That's probably the easiest way. So back to this. So advantages to being online, it was easy to broadcast because when we try and record things in the physical world, it's quite challenging, which we have done. It was more accessible geographically. So we had the best players from a lot of games, like Hive, for example. We had the world champion and the other top players play in our Hive tournaments. And these are things that are hard to do when you have a tournament in London. Often you don't get the top players. So definitely the level was a lot higher. But also dealing with cheating was tough. And as I mentioned, it's interesting. Some games are easier to cheat than others. A lot of the games that we play don't actually have AI engines yet. So it's harder to cheat, but you could still have collusion or other players giving you tips. So it's we had to deal with a whole wide variety of ways to stop cheating. And we did catch some cheaters. And one example that I want to give was in Othello, where we didn't have any screening technology that we're using at the time proactively. But when an unknown player showed up and took second, and there were several red flags raised, we actually we asked one of our top Othello players to run his games through an Othello engine. And we saw that in all the games he played the computer, either the first or second best move. And the only game that he lost was one blunder that looked like a mouse misclick. So statistically, it seemed very, very clear that there was cheating going on. And we still gave them the benefit of the doubt by allowing them to come and try and do an interview to go over their games with one of our fellow players and play just a friendly game with a webcam on to see just how strong they were, which they refused. So we ended up banning them, shaming them, 2 minutes. And I think the Othello incident in particular, there were a few other cheating incidents, but by publicizing that and also dealing with it in a very fair and I think conclusive manner, we also sent a very strong message to the community that integrity is, the utmost important, the most important thing for us, and people were very happy with that. All right, so I'm trying to keep track of time here. So yeah, so it was the biggest event ever. Discord was great. We had great feedback, and people are asking now, what will we do in the future? Do we keep running online tournaments, and or will MSO go back to its physical form? And the truth is, we're still figuring that out. Some games that we have that we love, we couldn't play this year because they don't exist online. So that's been a challenge. And but on the other hand, there's so many advantages to having things online. So in the future, we'll probably have a bit of both is the answer. And we're still figuring it out. And for next year, we're probably going to run it again online, and then hoping for a proper physical event back in 2022. Anyway, so there we go. I'm going to finish on time, not run over. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we postponed questions, and now I call Maurizio, very patient Maurizio.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you very much, Maurizio. Take it from here.
Okay, can I share my screen?
Etan, can you stop sharing the screen, please? Go ahead, Maurizio.
So, is it working?
Not yet.
Okay, wait, share.
There you go.
Okay. So, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm actually doing a talk which is a bit less technical. It's not technical at all, actually. It's just about the sociological aspects of the impact of the artificial intelligence on the world of Go. My name is Maurizio Parton. I am a mathematician working in differential geometry and artificial intelligence, two very different fields. And I'm also the president of the Italian Go Federation. So let's start because time is short. First of all, some history. Maybe you as chess player, the chess player in this conference are used to having artificial intelligence dominating the game now since 10, 20 years. But we have it only since 4 years, only since this date. And what happened, the history of what happened is strictly connected to our feelings today. So I will start with this bit of history. And so in October 2015, that was the first time in history when a professional Go player was defeated by an artificial intelligence, and is this one. However, that news was not made public because in the meantime, a scientific paper was submitted to Nature, and for this reason, the result was kept secret until the paper appeared, that is this date. And if you're looking for a date to memorize, that is the symbol of starting a new era for artificial intelligence, I would say this is why I wrote it explicitly, January 27, 2016. When the software was revealed, the software is called AlphaGo. And then, while beating the European Go champion in October was already an achievement, this European champion was much, much weaker than the best Go players in the world. And for this reason, a big match was arranged against Lisidol, not the world champion, but one of the best players and a role model to many players. Almost every Go player in the world, no matter from which time zone, attended live the online streaming of the games between Lisidol and AlphaGo. I, for one, organized a watching session at my place with other 10 players at 5 in the morning for 5 days. The outcome was completely astonishing, I would say almost shocking for every Go player. And icing on the cake, after 1 year, a new AlphaGo learned the game completely from scratch, the famous AlphaGo 0, without any human bias. And that version crashed completely the original AlphaGo in a match for 100-0. And that, you can see the implication. This means that our strategies, human strategies, developed during 3,000-4,000 years. Go is a very ancient game. These strategies were not only useless, but actually wrong. The human brain was sabotaging itself, we can say. So, to understand the impact of this news, this was a news not only for Go players, but just a big news for the general audience. It appeared on the headlines, on the general press, and there is also a movie on Netflix, movie documentary about the match against Lisidol, strongly suggested to watch it. So, just in a single word, this history, I would call it a revolution. Okay. For this talk, I identified 3 major topics. One is the difference between how professional and amateurs perceive the impact of AlphaGo and its derivations, like Lila, Lila Zero, and so on the Go world. The second, how the artificial intelligence can be used to learn and can be used to teach, new way of teaching. And third, the problem of cheating detection. We are very young, we have no advances in this yet, no serious advances. As a side note, I just realized writing these slides that cheating is the anagram of teaching. must mean something. Okay. As a representative of the professional players, I have selected Ajin Lee. Ajin Lee, she is a professional player from South Korea. She's the former secretary for the International Go Federation from 2014 to 2016, and she's very popular. She has a YouTube channel with almost 15K subscribers. And as a representative for amateurs, I have selected Antti Tormanen. He's from Finland. He's a former strong amateur. Now he's a professional player. And he's one of the creators of Nordic Go Dojo, that is a very, very popular online Go school. Now, Ajin Lee made a contribution for the last US Go Congress about the impact of Go on the world of professional players. And Antti Tormanen added to her contribution several comments, extending the analysis to amateurs. These read sentences are linked actually, and I will give the PDF so you can find the link by yourself if you are interested in deepening this analysis. Now, Ajin Lee observed that before the artificial intelligence, playing Go was a lifetime career to which you committed since a very, very young age. You received the traditional teaching, probably at Go Master's place, not at your place with your parents, with his family and other fellow students. And the life of a Go player was more similar to the life of a philosopher or maybe an artist, more than just a simple mind sport athlete. And you were always improving, looking for something unreachable, but at the same time, something of a human divine nature. In Go, there is a word expressing this concept, the divine move. This is expressing the way of playing that only a God could reach and towards which every Go player should tend and strive. We can think about it in a more technical sense about the perfect game in a zero-sum perfect information game. Anyway, on the practical side, many Go professional players were making, before artificial intelligence, were making their living not from tournaments, but from teaching, just a few ones from tournaments. Well, AlphaGo made completely evident two things to professional players. First, the divine move is far away from humans. And second, there will always be somebody stronger than you. And for some professional players, this was completely unbearable. For instance, Lee Sedol, the first guy involved in the history of Go, retired on November 2019, last year. And one of the reasons, for several reasons, of course, but one of the reasons was, quoting from Korean English translation, even if I become the number one, there is always an entity that cannot be defeated. And of course, this is just one pro, different pros and different reactions. For instance, KGA, after his defeat to AlphaGo, studied the games to find inspiration for new strategies, and then went on a 22-game winning streak against human opponents. And everybody, literally everybody, was impressed by his improvement. You see two professional players, two completely different reactions, but many of them, according to Ajin Lee contribute for the US Go Congress, many of them seem to be choosing to leave Go. And this is sad, I would say. Ajin Lee described this feeling as an enormous sense of loss. However, Antti Tormanen observes that while striving for the highest possible level of Go can be true for top players, this is certainly not true for the majority of us. By us, I mean amateurs. Instead, we look for the highest possible personal level of Go, with the compromise between our life, our efforts, and so on, because none of us has any chance to become the strongest player, the strongest human player also in the world. So for amateurs, even very strong amateurs, there is no bad news from this point of view. And actually, since there are more learning possibilities, this is a good news. And this takes us to the next point, which is learning and teaching. So how is learning changing for professional, in particular for tournament professionals? Well, I say that professionals, they attempt to reach the highest possible level. And in the pro circuit, it is a unanimous belief that you need to play as an artificial intelligence now in order to win. For this reason, every professional player uses now an artificial intelligence, as you can guess, to learn and to study. There are positive and negative sides. On the positive side, it seems more possible to every strong player, not just who is already close to the top level, but to every strong player, professional player, to become one of the best human players in the world. This hope is attracting a lot more of young people, and this is definitely a good thing. Moreover, learning with artificial intelligence sometimes helps a lot in improving. This in turn makes the competitions more interesting to fans because you have more young new players. And moreover, there is always the possibility that something unexpected will happen. This is very good news for the Go world because it makes the game more popular and competitions more interesting, more likely to attract sponsors. And you know, this is a big issue in every game. There is a downside, however. Since you need to play as an artificial intelligence to win, there is no more reason, apparently, for you to develop your own personal style. Before artificial intelligence, young players were looking for their preferred top player, usually Lidl. I told you he was a role model for Go players. And then they would buy and study the corresponding book titled The Style of, like in the style of Lidl, the style of Yamayuta, the style of Goes Again, and so on. Today, apparently only one book is needed, The Style of Artificial Intelligence. Now, Anti-Tournament in his reply noted in this respect that this is true today, okay, but just because the toy, the artificial intelligence, is very, very new. And we are still excited. We want to use everywhere, every time. We want to use it, just to use it. Once we become used to artificial intelligence in our normal Go life, we will probably develop personal, different new styles, using the new ideas of the artificial intelligence in a personal way, of course. For instance, there are already several examples of new openings invented, developed by the artificial intelligence that, despite being maybe a little bit suboptimal with respect to the ideal perfect game, they are perfectly playable by everyone, but you need to develop a personal style to support that kind of playing during the game. About teaching, now, this is another question. Clearly, the demand for high-level teaching games and commentary in private lessons and so on is severely reduced. Why should I pay a top professional player for a high-level game when I can have a much higher-level game for free? And since this was the main source of income for teaching professional players, it is apparent that this business model is now completely disrupted. And this in turn results in several professional players that are now struggling for a living. Antti Tormanen remarks that this should not be so, because good teachers can still give a lot that the artificial intelligence cannot. Let me explain just fast that studying with artificial intelligence can be very demotivating. There is just a number. You have a number telling you how good a certain move is. But why that move is good or bad, this is usually very, very hard to say. And if you play a game against an artificial intelligence, you have no hope. Whatever move you make, whatever path you take, you lose without really understanding what the mistake was. This is particularly true starting from strong amateurs. In fact, in this case, you're probably not making a single huge mistake. You're just playing suboptimal moves. And you just see your winning percentage inevitably decreasing. The best that can happen is that the percentage stay at the same level. But little bit is always decreasing. At the end, you will lose. And on the other side, artificial intelligence can be extremely creative. This means that you can learn a lot by looking at new moves and trying them in your games. However, you still don't know why you're doing that move, and this can be a limiting factor in your ability to memorize long sequences. Can you see the new opportunity for teachers teaching a high-level opinion of why the artificial intelligence is choosing that move? And maybe teach you also higher-level concepts that make it possible for you to use again that move in a different but in a similar situation. And in some sense, taking notion from fast and slow thinking, a good teacher should act as a translator from the artificial intelligence tacit knowledge to an explicit knowledge for the pupil. So you can imitate artificial intelligence moves without a teacher, of course. You can try to memorize them, but if somebody can tell you why the moves are played, you are much more likely to become able to really use them properly in your games. And amateurs are actually happy to pay for such a teacher. And indeed, I should say that there are already schools in Europe starting doing this. And the last point, the last topic, cheating. Before AlphaGo, meaning 5 years ago, 4 years ago, cheating was simply not possible because you didn't have a software able to play very well. Now everybody can cheat very easily, at least in online games, because there are several public artificial intelligence available. You may have heard about Lila. There is also Lila Chess. But detecting cheating is absolutely not easy, as you are aware from the history in the chess world. We are still at the beginning of the quest for a working cheating detection system. Cheating detection is much harder, of course, for strong players because they just need 1 or 2 suggestions from artificial intelligence to turn a game in their favor. And since they are strong, from that move on, they can maintain the advantage without other inexplicably brilliant moves. For weak players, cheating detection could possibly be easier, but strong players are the ones we are more concerned with. Now, I'll tell you a short story. When the first public artificial intelligence like Lila appeared, the European Go world was caught completely unprepared, and several players during online tournaments started looking in a very suspicious way at every brilliant move of their opponents. And I was a personal witness of a witch hunt where the witch was an Italian player in my role as a president of the Italian Go Federation, of course. After an online game in an international tournament, his opponent asked the referee to check their game against cheating, and the accusation was completely inconsistent based on cherry picking, which is a mistake when doing statistical analysis. But anyway, it resulted in online hate flares and everything like this. All these flares conveyed on an innocent frustration and fears of the Go players in that particular moment. I think that was the first time a European player was accused of cheating, and because of this, at that time, was really difficult to prove his innocence. Today, I would say we are getting better. The general idea is that the player is innocent until proven guilty. We, of course, trust a lot in sportsmanship, and moreover, we are doing, for the moment, more efforts towards making cheating very difficult. For instance, saying players, please use a webcam or ask a proctor to look at your games. I think this strategy is, for the moment, is a good compromise until reliable cheating detection tools appears. And to this respect, I'm pointing out this paper is a paper on cheating detection on archive, and it is from last month, so very, very recent. And always Antti Tormanen says in his blog that there will be some step forward very soon. And okay, in conclusion, everything is changing, some in the bad, some in the good, but I would say the overall final balance is positive. We have strong opponents available for playing, we have a larger number of players, and we have a more open teaching style. No more teaching human techniques, but humans teaching artificial intelligence techniques. And that's all.
Grazie, Maurizio. So we have a few instances for questions, if we have. If the speakers want to give everybody their email addresses in the chat to make contact easier afterwards. So please do it, because we only have a few minutes now. But if someone wants to ask something, please be our guest.
Jorge Nuno, I would have a question for Cameron.
Okay, go ahead. Camera is listening.
Yep, I am.
Okay. So my question is concerning the definition of Ludeme, because I know that the definitions, for example, in linguistics, the definitions of phoneme and grapheme are really problematic, and there are several different opinions and proposals, etc. So what about Ludemes?
We've taken a very liberal view. A Ludeme is any game-related concept. It could be a mathematical concept, a high-level logical concept, anything we can program.
Okay. So I guess in the website I can find the definition.
Yes, in some of the papers there'll be definitions. We have a language guide that lists all the Ludemes, and from that you should see what we consider Ludemes.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
More questions, please?
Yes, possible. Jan Kralbos here. I have a
Jan,
question.
can you speak? Go ahead. Can you speak louder, please?
Yes, I can speak louder. Hope this is better. I have a question for Maurizio. Would it be an improvement if an AI is able to explain itself to help teaching, for example, chess or Go?
Oh, very interesting question. Are you asking me my opinion on whether and when this would happen, or if it is possible?
No, because now you have people trying to explain what the AI is thinking, because the evaluation value of a move and a set of moves that give that evaluation doesn't explain the game itself, in my opinion.
Of course.
But I know, based on explainable artificial intelligence environments, it should be possible, I think, to create something that explains why a certain move is chosen over other moves based on evaluation.
Okay, so let me answer this way. Explainable artificial intelligence is a hot topic in research, and we are still very behind. For the moment, explainable artificial intelligence means more or less last layers of a neural network which are linear. That means not really expressible. And we are, of course, working on this. The European community is giving money for this, so everybody is working on this. But if you ask my opinion, when games as sophisticated as are chess and Go, their artificial intelligences will be able to have a version which is explainable in some way, I think we are far away, years, tens of years maybe. But it will happen eventually. There is a lot of research on this. For the moment, you can just try to extract metrics and decide to use that kind of metrics to explain something. And there is a lot of research also on agent modeling. That means I could model an agent on an aggressive style of play, on a defensive style of play, on a weak player, on a strong player. And then I could test this agent against a player, and so I can identify your style. This will give some information on you and so on. But to arrive at the point where you can say, okay, this is the best move, not because the percentage of winning in this move is 99%, but because there is this shape in the opposite side of the board, and there are these two stones precisely in that position, and so on. We are quite far from this. I mean, this is something that also professional players, sometimes they do not agree. It's very funny. This is a story I always say when I explain Go to beginners. I'm not sure in chess is the same. When you ask a professional player if they like a certain position, they use this way of saying. They say, I would prefer to be black, or I would prefer to be white. They very rarely state this position is winning for black or is winning for white. It's just a matter of perception according to their style. I mean, the game is so big that they cannot say. So we are asking an artificial intelligence to be able to explain something in this way. I'm confident that we will arrive at that eventually.
Well,
thank you.
It's past the time, so we have to close the session. I thank everybody, speakers and audience.